Is this where we talk about next? Here's the deal. Next is about analysis. Next is about commentary. We're looking to sort things out at the end of the day. There are gonna be less rules. We can really dig into the stuff that matters, that you haven't seen already. Want me to keep talking? The stuff that you see and you go, what's going on with that? Which means you may hear things that you disagree with. And that's okay. Let's bring it all together. We better not waste your time. That's it. That's the show. The A-line gets a lifeline, and RTD gets real with us about when Arvada is really going to get its long-awaited G-line. Our pollster cooks up a fresh look at where the presidential race stands in Colorado, plus some of the first numbers we've seen on which ballot questions are likely to pass. Newt Gingrich and I chat about how Donald Trump and Bill Clinton are kind of similar. And now that the Buffs don't stink anymore, there's some stuff that the coach would really like people to stop yelling. All that is next.
A quick word about words and how we intend to use them on Next. 40 years ago, 1976, Carl Akers began doing commentary on 9 News, the kind of commentary and analysis we'll share here on Next.
I'm no Carl Akers, not even close. But we are in the house Akers built, in the state Akers loved. And he knew that talking honestly, openly about the challenges and opportunities ahead for Colorado was an essential thing to do. He knew that Coloradans are hardy enough to hear a viewpoint different from their own and come away stronger, not weaker. I love what he once wrote. I'm not trying to influence the way anybody thinks about anything, but I do like to talk about things that affect all of us and our state. That was Carl Akers' view, and it's our view. The first of many you'll hear on Next.
Is the A-line working today? What's that look of disdain? Do you not trust the train to the plane? Oh yeah, it wasn't working again. There were crossing issues this morning at Quebec Street. Don't laugh, Steve. It messes with me. RTD's A-line had 10 to 15-minute delays, both east and westbound. Those problems were fixed in a bit more than an hour's time.
This revolution was televised, and perhaps that is why the polls and the media had it so wrong. Next promised you transparency, and it is so very clear indeed how wrong we were.
It suggests he doesn't have a clear path to 270. Hillary by 4 or 5 in Colorado. The polls would suggest the result is you're going to get smoked. A final thought for now on the election and the utter inability of pollsters to peg where Americans stand. Distrust in polling likely means that we are going to retreat farther into the comfort of anecdotes, any story we can tell to reinforce any belief that we want to be true. And that will only reinforce the tribalism that has split America into red team, blue team, red neighborhood, blue neighborhood. Anecdotes aren't evil, but if all you're exposed to are the selected stories of self-selected political pockets of like-minded people, then you are more apt to feel misled about what is really happening all around us in America. You know, like we felt last night.
Our next question came from a few Next viewers who all wondered if a fence isn't making for some tough sledding at Denver's popular Ruby Hill Park sledding hill.
In fact, Scott Yates says he saw several kids sled down that hill and smack into the wooden fence. Parks and Rec tells us the fence is a new installation, came in over the summer as part of a new bike area and walking path. The city says it didn't realize that it was much of a problem until we got in touch. So then the city went out and put in this. They put up temporary orange fencing, I guess, with some metal posts, thinking, well, the kids can hit that instead of the wood. I'm not sure if this is what you would call a solution or if we just swap problems, but, you know, at least it has the city's attention. So sled safe, kids.
24 hours and change until all this is over, until polls close in Colorado and you're going to end up in one of two camps. Not these two camps. And no, not the secret FEMA concentration camp you read about on that nutty website. 24 hours from now, you'll be in one of two camps. Those who can look back on the historic election and say, I voted, I made my voice heard. And those who mumble something about voting being hard or not mattering or some other garbage. 1.8 million beautiful people have voted in Colorado. Be one of the beautiful people. Tonight, a final pitch for the voters still holding onto a ballot. Your write-ins for president. The woman asked to cover up at Denver Elections headquarters. And when we'll see the last political ad of 2016. Grab this election by the ballot. Fill it out in the next half hour. We'll tell you where to stick it. This is Next.
We had hoped to have Libertarian presidential candidate Gary Johnson on Next tonight. His team accepted our invitation for him to appear. That was after some requests by Next viewers online. And Johnson's at a rally in Parker tonight at 7 o'clock, but his campaign didn't respond to our request for an interview today. Politics guy Brandon Ritterman is headed for the event tonight, hoping to at least toss a few questions Johnson's way. We tried to get him on the program because we've heard your calls to cover third-party candidates. Some folks will tell us, give all the candidates equal time, except that's not really what you mean.
When you say give all the candidates equal time, what you really mean is give equal time to the major party candidates, plus the third-party candidate that I like, plus maybe one more if I'm feeling charitable. But certainly not all the candidates. Not all 22 presidential candidates on the Colorado ballot. As the argument goes, if they only got equal time, they'd get more equal support. Really? Is that what's standing in the way of socialism and liberation candidate Gloria Estela La Riva? Oh, mentioned her. Gotta mention them all now. Equal time. There's Republican Donald Trump, Democrat Hillary Clinton, Libertarian Gary Johnson, Green Party candidate Jill Stein. We're just starting to get equal up in here. American Constitution candidate Darrell Castle, unaffiliated Evan McMullen, Ryan Allen Scott, Mike Smith, candidate Frank Atwood. No way, that's awesome. Oh, that's Frank Underwood. American Delta candidate Rocky De La Fuente, Prohibition candidate James Hedges. See you at the Beer Fest. American Party candidate Tom Hoefling, Veterans of America candidate Chris Nyson, Allison Kennedy with the Socialist Workers, Emilio Stolcik from Socialist USA. This equal time thing is tiring. Snack break with nutrition candidate Rod Silva, Independent American Kyle Kenley Koptic. Don't run on your initials, Kyle. Kotlikoff for president candidate Lawrence Kotlikoff. American Solidarity's Michael Morton. Independent People candidate Joseph Allen Maldonado. I give up. Kind of appropriate, though, because there's one more left. Nonviolent Resistance pacifist candidate Bradford Lytle. This has been equal coverage of Campaign 2016.
There's a song from the musical Into the Woods that I keep thinking about as I follow the election. There are lines that say, "Careful the things you say, children will listen. Children will look to you to learn what to be." I was driving home in the minivan from carpool one day when my third grader asked me a question from the back seat. He said, "Mom, is it true if Hillary Clinton becomes president, we're going to have school 7 days a week?" In that moment, I realized playground politics is a thing. Playground politics are very much like grown-up politics, which have seemed so childish at times. Children may not always understand or interpret it correctly, but they are listening. More than issues, they're listening to the tension, the negativity, the vitriol. They repeat the things they hear at the dinner table, on TV. Sometimes they repeat it accurately, sometimes what they think they heard. So I started asking other kids what they've heard on the playground.
People say they're both bad, like really mean, that she's robbed a bank.
Trump's a bully. She steals other people's money and robs houses.
Trump is a bully who doesn't like anyone who isn't like him.
She has let people into the country to hurt people. And Trump says bad words.
And calls people names. My mom doesn't let me do that.
Can a real girl be president anyway?
That's really all I've heard.
It's not about kumbaya. Our political system was built on opposing views for a reason. But I wish that our kids were learning about civil conversations, respectful competition, the idea that you can actually respect or like somebody even if you don't agree with them. Based on playground politics, it seems like kids are learning a lot more about name calling than country building. The point was punctuated when I drove back to carpool the next day, and my first grader noticed a mean word spray painted on a Trump sign. She's 6. This is the first election she will remember. It's not the introduction to the political system that I envisioned for her or any child. Careful the things we say. Children are listening. For Next, Cheryl Preheim, 9 News.
Is the A-line working today? Our beloved train to the plane? Sorta. There are some minor delays this morning, 10 to 15 minute stuff. RTD tweeted to people on the train that it was a result of communication issues. 42 years ago this week, President Richard Nixon was forced to resign in disgrace. Earlier in 1974, 20-something from Colorado quit his White House job writing speeches for Nixon and called for his resignation in the New York Times. John Andrews went on to found several conservative think tanks in Colorado and served as president of the state Senate. And we sat down today. You were a kid, relatively speaking, when you wrote that in the New York Times, taking on the President of the United States, your former boss.
I had to leave. I could not honestly collect my paycheck anymore, because speechwriting is very personal to the man that you work for, the man or woman that you serve. I didn't believe in Nixon anymore. It was a very intense several weeks in the era, in the life of a 29-year-old junior White House aide.
Did you ever think to yourself when you were at the White House, I'm working for a criminal?
And when Nixon said, "I'm not a crook," and people jokingly say, "Oh, you were the speechwriter who coined that?" No, unfortunately, he coined that one himself. But I never perceived him that way at all. I perceived him as a flawed man whose flaws caught up with him in kind of a Greek tragedy.
This year, you're supporting Donald Trump. And it strikes me that there are other Republicans, including some young Republicans, who are writing things like that, saying, I can't compromise my principle for the sake of my party. Do you understand where they're coming from?
I do. I respect the never Trump point of view. I'm a little bit impatient with my friends and fellow Republicans, proclaimed fellow conservatives who espouse it, just because in my case, the removal of an elected Republican president would have still given the people's will some effect by installing his Republican vice president.
I've heard some rumors that sometimes the train doesn't run on time, causes delays for passengers as well as out there at road grade crossings. A Next viewer actually recorded a video of her mom stuck at a crossing. And let's just say Mom's quote isn't about to show up in an ad for RTD anytime soon.
The crossing guard's like, what the
Come on, you piece of
Oh, Tammy, we love you. And for your daughter Marie for grabbing that video and sending it to us. Something tells me the next day the A-line isn't working, Tammy and her salty mouth might just make another appearance around here for a 3-second commentary.
Let's have a conversation about guns. Let's talk about something that makes us a little uncomfortable. Not the same kind of conversation that we've had over and over and over and over again. Let's talk in a way that's not dictated by emotion, but a different kind of conversation. Detail-oriented, fact-driven conversation. Facts are something that we need a little bit more of. The facts don't change. That's why we decided to put this video together. Only by knowing the statistics, only by knowing the data, will we truly know how to deal with this problem.
In a land of apple pie and baseball, there may be nothing more American than the good old American gun. In a country of 325 million, there are now enough guns to equip every man, every woman, every infant, and even a few dogs with one. And we keep buying. Last year, for example, in one state, Coloradans bought enough guns to give a gun to every Broncos fan at Mile High Stadium, even if that Mile High Stadium held 4.5 times more people than it does now, 342,000 seats to be precise. And while most of those guns will never be used in a crime, far too often some will be. In 2014, 10,945 people lost their lives in America on the wrong end of a gun. That's 30 people a day. Count suicides, which outnumbered homicides 2-to-1, and that year 90 Americans a day became part of a troubling statistic. We're so used to it, we barely notice milestones like this one. Most of us know 49 people died in a nightclub in Orlando in June. But how many of us know it took only 42 more hours for 49 more people to die as a result of gun homicides? The 49th victim after Orlando, a mother of 3 in Austin, Texas. So what to do? Some worry about so-called assault weapons, semi-automatic rifles mostly. Even if you stop selling them tomorrow and confiscated all rifles the next day, you'd only be getting rid of a weapon used in 3 to 4% of all gun homicides. Clubs and hammers kill more people every year in the U.S. than the big bad assault rifle. Also keep in mind, while 24-hour news networks make it seem like we've become a much more violent country, technically the homicide rate peaked the first year of Bill Clinton's presidency in 1993. Back then, there were at least 100 million less guns than there are now. Some suggest we need more laws, close the so-called gun show loophole, or limit magazine sizes, or bring back the assault weapons ban. Whether you agree with that or not one of those laws will put much of a dent in this fact. Every 2 weeks in the U.S., criminals murder 400 people with guns. 2 weeks, 400. That's generally the amount of people murdered by guns every year. In Portugal, the UK, Spain, France, Germany, and Australia combined. And don't forget, even if the U.S. banned all gun sales tomorrow, we'd still have more than 300 million guns. Enough for you, me, and everyone else. Even if you left over for your dog. And if you don't believe us, at least you should try to believe them. Or them. Or them. Or them.
We begin tonight with shouty team coverage of Colorado's completely normal fall weather, which we will attempt to hype up until it's interesting. Gray and drizzly in the city. Drizzle, you know what that is? It's like rain, only sneakier. Snow in the mountains. Who would have thought? Look at Independence Pass. Now look closer. We go to Steve Stager, who's out in the elements.
This is perfectly normal fall weather in Colorado, Kyle. Back to you.
Next, viewers have asked us a curious question about cues and why they seem to be all over Colorado license plates. Steve Stager's our go-to guy for random information.
So a bunch of people are asking online, what's the deal with all the cues in Colorado license plates? It's something you don't notice until you actually start to look for it.
So I decided to get out in the community, not too far from my desk. Let's see how many cues we can find on this one city block.
There's one.
This may take a few minutes. In the meantime, we set up an interview down the street. There were 3 cars with cues on that block. We also found Lynn Granger.
I'm the Director of Communications for the Colorado Department of Revenue.
She ought to have the answer.
Up until about 6 years ago, we used a font on license plates that made it very difficult to distinguish between the letter Q, the letter O, and the number 0. And that made it really hard for especially law enforcement officials to distinguish between those 3.
So the DMV only used zeros, no O's, no Q's. 6 years ago, they made a slight change to the highway Gothic font they use that allows Q's and O's to appear more clearly. And 2 years ago, they started issuing plates with both letters.
We've had about a rise since the December 2014. Between now and then, we've had an additional 200,000 vehicles registered in the state of Colorado. And of course, that's about the time that we started issuing the Q and the O on license plates. So it would make sense that we would have a lot more of those.
There's 4.
So either the novelty or the sheer volume of newly licensed cars is making people notice.
I think it's funny that that's something that people would kind of catch on to and go, hey, that's weird.
Back on our block, it didn't seem like a popular letter until the end.
10, 11.
4 cars in a row had Q's, making the grand total 12. And since then, I've seen Q all over the place. For next, this is Steve Stager.
What was it about the war that made you mean? It wasn't fighting. It wasn't just going out there fighting, killing people. And I learned that from being amongst other people that was there for the same reason.
We are so blessed with this country. And in my career, I've been to a lot of countries, and we are truly blessed here.
And all these guys that pitch in and help to make this possible, God, we can't thank them. We can't thank them enough. That's something I'll carry with me when my day is done. Because, yeah, you're proud to be a part of it.
They are proud of their service, and we are in their debt. So today, that is why we are supporting Colorado veterans and supporting the Rocky Mountain Honor Flight. You know, your generous donations have already funded 1 flight full of veterans from the West. These kind folks who share your desire to give those veterans the thanks they deserve are on the other end of the phone line at 303-577-2080.
Sure.
If I might share with you why I'm choosing to give personally, the impact of these honor flights goes beyond just the vets. You know what I'm talking about if you've ever been in an airport terminal as the crowd rises as one to applaud the veterans, to shake their hands. All those very important people in very important hurries will stop in their tracks and reassess for a moment what is very important. And at the memorials in Washington, I've been able to watch as the families with kids share conversations about the sacrifices of veterans and then turn around and see one approaching up the walk. And all of a sudden, history is no longer a lesson. It's a living person with a face and a name and perhaps a story that they'll share. So that's why I'm choosing to give to Rocky Mountain Honor Flight today, for the veterans and for everyone that they will pass along the way. So here's an idea. Let's turn Next into a place where these tough conversations can actually happen. Trump supporters, Clinton supporters, third-party people, folks who didn't vote, talking for real over coffee or a beer or whatever. I'll come along. I'll keep the conversation moving along. We're calling our new segment, Let's Just Talk with Kyle Clark. Tonight, our first installment of what we're calling Let's Just Talk. Mike Kiffin from Del Norte down the San Luis Valley and Sherry Rail from Arvada. You guys are the inaugural go-around of Let's Just Talk. Thanks for coming in to have a conversation.
Thanks for having us.
So Sherry, you voted Clinton. Mike, you voted Trump. How do you feel?
Surprised and happy. Biggest thing is when you talk to people in Denver, Denver is the entire state of Colorado. There's a lot of us out there in the middle of the country, in the middle of our state, at the edges of our state. And not everything that happens here is what's happening in those other areas.
I am a single mom and I have an almost 18-year-old son. And for me, just knowing that all these Americans, all these people have voted for this man who is, to me, uses such vulgar language, treats minorities and talks about minorities and women in such a way that I never thought there were people like that out there.
If you want in, just email us, next@9news.com, or get our attention with the hashtag HeyNext. And again, hundreds of you have already signed up for this. We are airing an hour-long Let's Just Talk special on Friday night. Voters from across Colorado and across the political spectrum gathering to talk about what a Trump presidency and the past election means to them.
I'm a registered Democrat. I would vote against a Democrat if I believed in a different candidate.
There are going to be people that agree or disagree with me, and that's fine. That's why I love this country. We can disagree with each other.
Rather than continuing the tug of war we've got going on, we need to sit down, let's just talk, and come together.
The request I put on social media last night was, I want to know. I would like to know why you think things will be better.
We are a visibly divided nation, and I'm fear of people and their response into all of this, their protests and their riots and their beatings of people for just because I voted for somebody. That's what scares me.
I am happy that I was able to do this and listen. And I believe that you can't necessarily change anybody in one conversation. And I wouldn't be out here trying to change her again.
Welcome to Let's Just Talk, a special hour-long edition of Next. I'm Kyle Clark. This is a community conversation featuring Coloradans from across the state and across the political spectrum. They disagree on politics, but they very firmly agree that one thing that we could use more of in America and in Colorado these days is honest conversation between people who don't always see eye to eye. Hands for everyone who voted for Hillary Clinton. Hands of everyone who voted for Donald Trump. Hands of anyone who voted for someone else. Matthew, you voted for Libertarian Gary Johnson. In actuality, 1 out of 12 on this panel is actually an over-representation of third-party votes in the state of Colorado, but we felt that it was important to have your voice here, and we'll hear from a Green Party voter as well. What are your practical fears for the future?
That people I love and people I know won't get treated fairly as someone else. I mean, I'm just a human. I'm like everybody else in this room. I just want to be loved and love people in return.
The people I know, we're not racist. We're not small-minded. We think outside the box a lot of the time. And honestly, at least me personally, I accept a lot of Democrats in my life. And work with them, and I don't hate them. I don't feel any bad things about them. Just because we disagree doesn't mean I should hate you or you should hate me, you know.
If he follows through on some of his more extreme promises, like the idea of registering Muslims entering this country, building a wall, will you regret your vote?
I don't know that I would regret it, but I think it'd bring me closer to people who didn't vote for him.
I think less spin, and I think this is a good platform that is kind of providing color from every spectrum, whether it's Republican, whether it's Democrat, whether it's Green Party, whether it's Libertarian, Independent, doesn't matter.
I think if anything I learned in this election about, as American people, we are a kind-hearted people, loving for others. And it means immigration, it means all of the things that our American standards have held for years and years and years, and our veterans have fought for. Let's find that as our common ground and move together. Doesn't matter what our economic policies are. We can probably make many of the tactics work, but as a people, let's agree to be kind to each other.
Anastasia Bolton does not cover politics for 9 News, but she is passionate about the power of voting. She was born in Russia and voted for the first time in 2008 after becoming a naturalized citizen. And despite all the nasty rhetoric this year, she treasures her vote.
For many of you who were born in this country, voting is a right. To me, it's a privilege. I was born in Moscow, Russia. I immigrated to this country in the mid-90s. My first presidential election was in 2008. I had just become a citizen. I registered immediately, and I was proud to go vote. I didn't do the mail-in ballot. I went to my polling place because I wanted to know how it felt to actually matter. To be heard, and for my voice to count. I touched that machine ever so gently to make sure I was doing the right thing, and I apologize. This is emotional for me even still. So when I watched the inauguration of my first president, I cried. It was slightly embarrassing because I was on a treadmill at the gym. Apparently I'm a public crier. So I looked at him and I said out loud, "This is my president." Russia is a place where strong, vocal members of opposition are mysteriously or not so mysteriously killed in the streets, in the heart of the city. The place where being a journalist is dangerous. That's where I'm from. And while it's not all bad, I choose. I am lucky enough to be able to choose to live here. I'm an American. I raised my family here. I vote here. It makes me mad when people are cavalier with their privilege, when they say it's not important, or they won't participate because they're mad and nothing will change. I am passionate about our democracy. I am excited to cast my ballot because I cannot wait to be heard. I know it matters, and I am certain I will count.